Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Vikings. Valhalla blends historical events and figures with imaginative storytelling. Set in the early 11th century, it takes place after the end of the traditional Viking Age, which ended around the late 10th century. The show introduces characters like Leif Erikson, Brice Eriksdottir, and Harald Sigurdsson, who are based on real historical figures, though their actions and interactions are often fictionalized for dramatic purposes. The show emphasizes the cultural clash between the Vikings and the expanding Christian world, mirroring the historical spread of Christianity in Scandinavia. It also touches on significant events, such as the Viking raids on England, the Battle of Stamford Bridge, and the political struggles of the time. However, while it captures the Viking spirit, the narrative incorporates anachronisms and embellishments to heighten the drama, making it more of a historical fantasy than a strict documentary-style retelling. By blending history with myth, Vikings, Valhalla, explores themes of honor, revenge, and the Viking quest for glory, but with a focus on the personal journeys and relationships of its characters, often diverging from historical accuracy for the sake of plot. The Vikings, originating from the Scandinavian regions of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, were not only feared warriors but also skilled sailors, traders, and explorers. Beginning around the late 8th century and continuing into the 11th century, they embarked on numerous raids, invasions, and trading ventures that stretched across Europe, Asia, and the North Atlantic. Their most famous raids were on the British Isles, where they looted monasteries, towns, and villages, often causing widespread devastation. One of the most well-known events was the Viking raid on Lindisfarne in 793, which marked the beginning of the Viking Age. Over time, the Vikings established settlements in Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales, significantly influencing the culture and governance of these regions. Beyond their raids, the Vikings were also proficient traders. They established extensive trade networks that connected the Scandinavian world with the Byzantine Empire, the Islamic caliphates, and the Slavic regions, exchanging goods like furs, timber, and iron for silver, spices, and luxury items. This trading helped foster cultural exchanges that enriched Viking society. Exploration was another key aspect of Viking activity. Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Red, is credited with reaching North America around the year 1000, well before Christopher Columbus. The Vikings established temporary settlements in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, known as Vinland. Although these settlements were abandoned after a short time due to conflicts with indigenous peoples and harsh environmental conditions. The historical impact of the Vikings is also seen in their contributions to shipbuilding and navigation. The longship, a versatile and fast vessel, allowed them to raid, trade, and explore with remarkable efficiency, making them formidable on both the open sea and along rivers. While Viking raids often overshadow their peaceful activities, the Vikings' legacy is multifaceted, encompassing cultural exchange, settlement building, and significant advancements in maritime technology. Their influence is still visible today in the place names, language, and genetic heritage of many regions in Europe and the North Atlantic. Leif Erikson is one of the most renowned Viking explorers, often credited with being the first European to set foot in North America, centuries before Christopher Columbus. His journey to a region called Vinland, believed to be located in modern-day Newfoundland, Canada, is recounted in the Saga of the Greenlanders and the Saga of Eric the Red, two Icelandic sagas that blend history with legend. According to these accounts, Leif set sail from Greenland around the year 1000, driven by reports of land to the west. While the exact nature and extent of Leif's exploration remain subjects of debate, archaeological evidence supports the idea of Norse presence in North America. In the 1960s, the site of Lonso Meadows in Newfoundland was discovered, revealing the remains of a Norse settlement that aligns with descriptions from the sagas. However, historians and archaeologists continue to question how widespread the Viking presence was in North America, and whether Leif's exploration was the only or most significant expedition to the New World. Leif's legacy is also tied to his family, notably his father, Eric the Red, who is credited with founding the first Norse colony in Greenland. Leif's voyages, while not as extensively documented as those of later explorers like Columbus, are considered pivotal in the broader story of Viking exploration. In Vikings Valhalla, Leif is portrayed as a brave and adventurous figure, though the show takes creative liberties with his story for dramatic effect. While the show presents Leif as a central character in a broader historical context, it is important to remember that much of what we know about him and his journey is drawn from sagas, which are often more mythological than strictly factual. Freydis Eriksdottir, Leif's sister, also plays a prominent role in the sagas, especially in relation to the exploration of Vinland. While she is depicted as a strong and fearless woman in both the historical texts and the series, much of her portrayal is similarly imbued with legendary elements. Harald Hardrada, another key figure in Vikings Valhalla, was a real historical individual who later became King of Norway. His earlier life was marked by his service as a mercenary in the Byzantine Empire and his involvement in the Kievan Rus before he returned to Norway and made claims to the throne. His famous death in the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066, while attempting to invade England, marked the end of the Viking Age and is a significant moment in medieval history. Overall, Vikings Valhalla brings these figures to life, blending historical reality with fiction to create a gripping narrative. However, the true stories of these Vikings are far from fully understood and are still the subject of ongoing research and interpretation. Freydis Eriksdottir, the sister of Leif Erikson, is indeed a fascinating and complex figure in Viking history. Though much of what is known about her is drawn from sagas, which often mix history with myth and exaggerate certain qualities for dramatic effect. The saga of the Greenlanders and the saga of Eric the Red provide the most prominent accounts of her life, though they are often inconsistent and embellished, making it difficult to distinguish the historical Freydis from the legendary figure. In Tauf, the sagas, Freydis is depicted as a bold, assertive, and often ruthless woman, and her actions are framed within a dramatic narrative of exploration and survival. One of the most famous episodes involving her is during the Viking expedition to Vinland, North America. In one saga, Freydis is described as playing a central role in defending the Viking settlement in Vinland. In a particularly notorious incident, she is said to have killed several men who were part of her crew after a dispute, in a cold and brutal fashion. This act of violence, which highlights her fierce and unyielding nature, is a key part of her saga-based legend. While the sagas certainly emphasize her strength and leadership, the historical accuracy of these events remains unclear. It is likely that Freydis, like many women of her time, was involved in the activities surrounding the settlement and exploration of Vinland, but the extent of her role and the dramatic qualities attributed to her may be exaggerated. In Vikings Valhalla, Freydis is portrayed as a formidable warrior, mirroring the saga's depiction of her as an independent and fierce leader. The show amplifies her legendary status, making her a central figure in the narrative and emphasizing her resilience and determination, often adding a layer of heroism to her character. While these traits align with the saga's Freydis, the real Freydis's life and actions remain largely shrouded in uncertainty, making her a figure whose true legacy is intertwined with myth. The blending of fact and fiction in the portrayal of Freydis both in the sagas and in modern adaptations like Vikings Valhalla highlights the challenge of separating historical truth from the powerful influence of storytelling and legend. While she may have been a strong and resilient woman, the more dramatic elements of her character are likely products of the cultural imagination, shaped over time by the people who told and retold her story. Harald Hardrada, also known as Harald Hardrada of Norway, is one of the most storied figures in Viking history, remembered for his ambitious military career and his dramatic final confrontation at the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. His life, filled with intrigue, warfare, and power struggles, is a testament to the Vikings' relentless pursuit of conquest and dominance during the twilight years of the Viking Age. Born around 1015, Harald grew up during a time of political instability in Norway. After the death of his half-brother Olaf II, Saint Olaf, who had been king, Harald spent time in exile, eventually traveling to the Byzantine Empire, where he joined the elite Varangian Guard, an all-Norse mercenary force that served the Byzantine emperor. His time in the Byzantine Empire proved pivotal in shaping his military prowess. Harald gained a reputation as a fierce and capable leader, participating in several campaigns across the Mediterranean and Eastern Europe. This experience would later serve him well in his quest to expand his own power. In the 1040s, Harald returned to Norway and fought to claim the throne. He succeeded in establishing himself as the King of Norway in 1047, after a series of battles and political maneuvers. However, his most famous and ultimately disastrous campaign occurred in 1066, when he sought to claim the English throne. Following the death of King Edward the Confessor, the throne of England became contested. Harold, claiming that he had a right to the throne through a supposed agreement with Edward and a promise from previous English kings, launched a military campaign to seize England. His forces landed in northern England, and Harold's army advanced toward York. However, the English king, Harold Godwinson, had already defeated another claimant to the throne, King Harald Hardrada's rival, and quickly marched north to meet him. The two armies clashed at Stamford Bridge near York on September 25, 1066. The battle was fierce, and despite Harold's reputation as a formidable warrior, he was defeated by the English forces. Harald Hardrada was killed in battle, and his death marked the end of an era for the Vikings. His defeat was also symbolic of the declining Viking influence in Britain, as the Normans, led by William the Conqueror, would soon invade and claim the English throne later that same year, just weeks after the Battle of Stamford Bridge. In Vikings Valhalla, Harold is portrayed as a determined, ambitious, and charismatic leader, driven by a desire to expand his power and leave a legacy. The series dramatizes his quest for the English throne, focusing on his military strategy, his relationships with key figures, and his relentless pursuit of his ambitions. The show injects a sense of flair into his character, emphasizing his larger-than-life personality and his unwavering pursuit of glory. While it draws inspiration from historical accounts, the portrayal takes creative liberties for dramatic effect, adding layers of intrigue and intensity to Harold's story. Harald Hardrada's legacy as a warrior and king endures, and his death at Stamford Bridge serves as one of the most defining moments in Viking history, marking the end of Viking raids in England and a shift in the power dynamics of medieval Europe. His story is one of ambition, valor, and tragedy, making him a compelling figure both in history and in popular adaptations like Vikings, Valhalla. The transition from paganism to Christianity in the Viking world during the 11th century is one of the most significant religious and cultural transformations in European history, and Vikings. Valhalla incorporates this conflict into its storyline. By this time, the Viking world, which had long been rooted in Norse mythology and pagan rituals, was undergoing a profound shift as Christianity gradually spread through Scandinavia. This period of religious change was marked by both peaceful conversions and violent struggles, often intertwined with political power struggles. King Olaf II Haraldsson, also known as Saint Olaf, was one of the central figures in this religious transformation. Born around 995, Olaf was initially a pagan warrior king, but he became a fervent Christian and played a key role in the conversion of Norway to Christianity. Olaf's reign in the early 11th century marked a period of intense religious conflict, as he sought to eradicate pagan practices and establish Christianity as the dominant religion in Norway. His methods were often forceful, as he used both persuasion and military violence to convert the Norse people. One of Olaf's most infamous actions was his campaign to destroy pagan temples and sacred sites, a move that led to considerable resistance from the traditional pagan leaders and communities. The use of violence to enforce Christianity was a source of tension, as it clashed with the Norse pagan traditions, which had long been an integral part of Viking identity. Olaf's efforts were not universally popular, and they led to uprisings and opposition from those who remained loyal to the old gods. Despite the resistance, Olaf's efforts were successful, and he eventually became one of the most important figures in the Christianization of Norway. After his death in 1030, Olaf was canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church, further solidifying the role of Christianity in Norwegian society. His legacy as a martyr and saint helped to solidify the Christian faith among the Norse people, even as paganism continued to hold influence in some regions for several decades. In Vikings, Valhalla, this tension between the Old Norse pagan beliefs and the rise of Christianity is explored as a central theme. The show portrays characters grappling with the changes in their society, torn between loyalty to the old gods and the pressure to accept the new faith. The rise of Christianity is depicted not just as a religious shift, but as a political one as well, with kings like Olaf II using their power to impose Christian beliefs on their people, often leading to conflict with the more traditional pagan leaders. The series brings this historical conflict to life, highlighting the internal and external struggles faced by Viking leaders as they navigated the cultural, political, and religious upheaval of the time. As Viking society was increasingly divided between the followers of the old gods and those converting to Christianity, the show emphasizes the challenges and consequences of this transformation, painting a picture of a world in flux. While it amplifies the drama for the sake of the narrative, Vikings. Valhalla touches on a critical moment in history when the Viking world was caught between two religions, with both sides vying for control of the future of the North. The Viking. Longships, featured prominently in Vikings, Valhalla, and other Viking-related media, are among the most iconic and technologically advanced aspects of Viking history. These ships were pivotal to the Vikings' success as raiders, traders, and explorers. Their design and construction allowed the Vikings to undertake missions across vast distances, from the coasts of North America to the Mediterranean, and even into the heart of Europe, navigating rivers and seas with unparalleled efficiency. The longship was specifically designed for versatility. Its most notable feature was the shallow draft, which enabled it to operate both in the open sea and in shallow rivers. This design allowed the Vikings to navigate not only the open ocean, but also inland waterways, giving them the ability to raid and trade far from their home bases in Scandinavia. The ability to traverse rivers and land on unprotected shores made Viking raids swift and unpredictable, contributing to their reputation as fearsome warriors. In addition to their shallow draft, longships were built with a symmetrical hull, meaning they could travel efficiently in both directions without needing to turn around. This characteristic made them particularly agile, allowing Vikings to quickly retreat or advance without the need for maneuvering in tight spaces. Longships were also powered by both sails and oars, making them highly adaptable to various weather conditions. This combination of sail power for long-distance travel and oar power for maneuvering in coastal waters or rivers gave the Vikings great flexibility in their expeditions. The construction of a Viking longship was a highly skilled process. The ships were typically built using overlapping planks of oak, creating a strong, flexible hull. This technique, known as clinker-built construction, made the ship sturdy enough to withstand the harsh conditions of the North Atlantic while remaining light enough to be easily maneuverable. The Vikings also took great care in the aesthetic aspects of their ships, with many longships being adorned with intricate carvings, shields, and figureheads. These decorative elements not only reflected the cultural importance of the ships, but also helped to reinforce the Vikings' identity and status as formidable seafarers. Viking longships were essential for both raids and trade. Their ability to travel quickly and surreptitiously allowed the Vikings to launch surprise attacks on monasteries, towns, and settlements across Europe, as well as to establish trade routes that spanned from the Baltic Sea to the Byzantine Empire and beyond. In addition to their military uses, longships were also instrumental in Viking exploration. Leif Erikson's journey to North America and other expeditions into the Atlantic were made possible by the versatility and endurance of Viking longships. Longships' impact on Viking culture cannot be overstated. It symbolized not only their maritime prowess but also their adventurous spirit. The ship was integral to Viking life, serving as a vehicle for both conquest and discovery. In Vikings Valhalla, the ships are a central part of the narrative, embodying the Vikings' capacity for exploration, their naval superiority, and their relentless drive to expand their influence across the known world. The legacy of the Viking longship endures in the historical and cultural imagination, as it was instrumental in shaping the course of Viking history and their interactions with the broader world. The innovation behind these ships was a key factor in the Vikings' ability to become one of the most influential and far-reaching peoples of the medieval period. The Battle of Stamford Bridge, which takes place in Vikings Valhalla, is one of the most pivotal moments in Viking history and marks the end of the Viking Age in England. While the show dramatizes the events surrounding the battle for narrative effect, the actual battle holds immense historical significance, both for the Vikings and for England. The battle occurred on September 25, 1066, when Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway, launched an invasion of England, claiming the English throne. In response to the death of King Edward the Confessor, Hardrada, who was a veteran of numerous campaigns and had extensive military experience, sought to capitalize on a disputed succession and expand his influence. He had a claim to the throne through an agreement made with previous English kings, and he believed his forces were strong enough to press his claim. Hardrada's army, which had landed in the north of England, quickly advanced toward York. The Viking force was initially successful, capturing the city and making preparations to consolidate their position. However, King Harald Godwinson of England, having just defeated another threat in the south, his confrontation with Harold of Wessex, quickly marched north to confront Hardrada. The two armies met at Stamford Bridge near York. According to historical accounts, the English army arrived unexpectedly, catching the Vikings off guard. The battle that followed was fierce and bloody, with the English forces eventually emerging victorious. Hardrada was killed in the battle, marking the end of his ambitions to conquer England. His death also symbolized the collapse of Viking influence in the region. The aftermath of the battle, however, is where the true historical shift occurred. Just days after the battle at Stamford Bridge, King Harald Godwinson was forced to march his army south to face another invading force, the Normans, led by William the Conqueror. The Norman conquest of England, which culminated in the Battle of Hastings on October 14, 1066, would completely reshape the political and social landscape of England. The defeat of Harald Godwinson at Hastings, coupled with the rapid decline of Viking power following Stamford Bridge, marked the end of the Viking Age in England. While Vikings, Valhalla dramatizes the events leading up to and during the Battle of Stamford Bridge, the historical significance of the battle remains clear. The battle was not just a defeat for the Vikings, but a turning point in the history of England and the broader medieval world. It marked the end of a period of Viking raids and invasions that had begun centuries earlier and laid the groundwork for the coming Norman rule, which would radically transform English society, language, and governance. In the series, the battle is portrayed with intense action and drama, highlighting the personal and political stakes for the characters involved. Though the show takes liberties with certain aspects of the battle and the individuals involved, it captures the essence of the historical moment, a decisive clash between two great powers that would mark the end of an era. The battle and its aftermath serve as a reminder of how the shifting tides of war and power can dramatically reshape the course of history. While Vikings, Valhalla draws inspiration from real historical events and figures. It's important to remember that the show is primarily a work of entertainment rather than a strict historical retelling. Like many historical dramas, Vikings, Valhalla takes creative liberties to enhance the narrative, amplify drama, and engage viewers, often prioritizing entertainment value over historical accuracy. As a result, many aspects of the story, including battles, character motivations, and relationships, are exaggerated or altered for dramatic effect. For example, the show amplifies the personal conflicts between historical figures like Leif Erikson, Friedis Eriksdottir, Harald Hardrada, and others. While these individuals certainly had complex lives and played significant roles in Viking history, their relationships and interactions are often portrayed in a more polarized or personal light than the historical record suggests. In reality, many of the events and dynamics presented on screen were far more nuanced, influenced by political, cultural, and societal factors that the show simplifies or overlooks. Battles, too, are depicted with heightened intensity, with large-scale, action-packed sequences designed to captivate the audience. While the Battle of Stamford Bridge and other historical conflicts were indeed pivotal moments, the depiction of the strategies, the scale, and the emotions involved are often amplified. The real battles were shaped by complex military tactics, logistics, and alliances that aren't always fully conveyed in the show, as the focus is placed on individual heroism and dramatic confrontations. The cultural and religious transformation that took place during the Viking Age, specifically the rise of Christianity and the decline of Norse paganism, is another area where Vikings, Valhalla takes some creative liberties. The show portrays the clash between paganism and Christianity as a central theme, often depicting the conflict in stark, dramatic terms. However, the actual process of Christianization in Scandinavia was more gradual, with political leaders like King Olaf II of Norway playing key roles but also facing considerable resistance and complex negotiations with local communities. The realities of conversion involved a variety of factors, including diplomacy, intermarriage, and the spread of Christian influence over time, rather than just the violent confrontations often portrayed in the series. Furthermore, Vikings, Valhalla, simplifies the political and social dynamics that were at play during the Viking Age. The complex network of alliances, feuds, and rivalries among Viking chieftains, Scandinavian kings, and the wider European world is reduced to more straightforward, confrontational relationships. The real Viking world was far more intricate, with shifting allegiances and evolving power structures that cannot be fully captured in a fictionalized drama. Ultimately, while Vikings, Valhalla, successfully brings the Viking Age to life with thrilling action, memorable characters, and dramatic storylines, it is essential to remember that the show is not a precise historical account. The real history of the Vikings is far richer and more layered, involving a range of cultural, political, and social factors that are often simplified or exaggerated for the sake of storytelling. Viewers should appreciate the show for its entertainment value while acknowledging the complexities and nuances of the historical period it is inspired by. Despite its historical liberties, Vikings, Valhalla offers an exciting and engaging way for viewers to dive into the world of the Vikings. The series highlights some of the most significant moments of Viking history, such as the Battle of Stamford Bridge, the spread of Christianity, and the legendary voyages of figures like Leif Erikson and Harald Hardrada. While it is not always a precise representation of historical events, it provides an accessible entry point for audiences interested in Viking history, prompting them to explore the real stories behind the characters and events depicted. The characters in Vikings Valhalla, from the fierce Fridas to the ambitious Harald, serve as compelling focal points that reflect broader historical trends of the Viking Age, such as the shift in religious beliefs, the expansion of Viking influence across Europe, and the internal power struggles that shaped Scandinavian society. Even though the show dramatizes and alters certain aspects of their lives for storytelling purposes, these characters are based on real individuals whose actions left lasting marks on history. The series encourages viewers to consider the complexities of Viking culture, the significance of their seafaring technology, and their impact on medieval Europe. For those interested in delving deeper, Vikings, Valhalla can spark curiosity about the true historical figures and events behind the show. It might inspire viewers to seek out primary sources like the sagas, historical chronicles, and modern historical analyses that provide a more detailed and nuanced picture of the Viking world. Additionally, the show highlights the Vikings' role in the broader context of European history, especially their interactions with the Anglo-Saxons, Normans, and other medieval cultures. By focusing on key moments like the conquest of England and the rise of Christian influence, Vikings, Valhalla serves as a jumping-off point for exploring the changing dynamics of the medieval world, including the end of the Viking Age and the beginning of new political eras in England and Scandinavia. Ultimately, while the series may not be an exact historical account, it plays an important role in making Viking history accessible and captivating for a wide audience. It fosters interest in the rich and varied legacy of the Vikings, inspiring viewers to learn more about this fascinating period in history, and allowing for further exploration of their impact on the development of medieval Europe. Thank you for watching this video.